guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be chatting through my December TBR, the final TBR of 2021. I honestly can't believe it. My plans for December are basically to try to leave my house as little as possible. I just want to hang out with Matilda, read books on the couch, and like eat cookies. I don't want to do anything. Please don't ask me because I'm going to say no. But that being said, with my TBR, I really tried to craft it with as much care as possible. I want to wrap up some series. I have so many books I want to read before the end of 2021. Maybe I'll read more than these, but we shall see. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first book I'm going to chat about, I have been waiting all year for, and I plan to pick up basically once I finish filming this video, and that is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee, the third and final book in the Green Bones saga. I can't wait. I've just been yammering on about my love for Jade City, Jade War, so obviously with the third book coming out, it's going to be hopefully a fantastic time. But Jade Legacy, again, is the third book to the Green Bones saga, which is an Asian-inspired urban fantasy story set on the fictional island of Khan. This particular location is controlled primarily by two very powerful crime families, and they're so powerful because they kind of control the production and distribution of a substance called jade. Certain individuals can wear jade, and once they do, they become more powerful, stronger, faster, all of those things. And at the beginning of book one, the turf war is beginning to heat up a bit between these two families, and throughout this series you follow a variety of different perspectives from one of these crime families, from different power positions within the family itself. There is just so many fantastic things to say, from combat to character work, just the drama and attention to detail that Fonda Lee has. I am obsessed, and obviously third book coming out at the very end of November, came out November 30th. I was waiting anxiously by my mailbox. I can't wait to read this book. This will hopefully be the first book I complete for the month. I also want to maybe vlog it. We'll see if I read it slow enough that I can sneak a vlog in there, but nonetheless, I can't wait. Speaking of wrapping up some series I'm very excited about, the next book on my list is The Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. This is the third book to the Tawny Man series, which is the third trilogy within Robin Hobb's world. I love Robin Hobb so very much, and I definitely want to finish this particular trilogy before next year because I want to start a new series within this world at the beginning of the year. So I'm just trying to stay on top of it. This particular series follows primarily Fitz and the Fool. We are back within the Farseer Kingdom, and we are back with Fitz after a bit of a time skip after the end of the Farseer trilogy. Robin Hobb's fantasy stories are incredibly character focused. They're very, very emotional, and they're slow moving, but all of those things I personally really appreciate, as I feel not only deeply connected to the characters within this world, but I also just feel like Robin Hobb's pacing provides some incredible plot payoff when things do finally decide to hit the fan, if you will. But this particular story, we follow Fitz and the Fool as they are going out on another quest and adventure again. Fitz finds himself central to the politics of the Farseer line, and he is dealing with the emotional trauma of having to relive a lot of the expectations of his youth to this particular royal line, as well as getting involved with the different types of magic that preside within this world. One is called the Wit, which is more animal-based magic, and the other is called the Skill, which is more like mind control style magic. Both of them are pretty rare, and the association to one or the other is beginning to kind of escalate at the beginning of this particular series in book one. I love this world so very much. I feel like this final book is going to make me sob my eyes out. The relationship that Robin Hobb has created between Fitz and the Fool, I feel like, is one of the most dynamic, most unique, most emotionally charged relationship in fantasy. It's just incredible. Like, Robin Hobb, incredible. I could talk about Robin Hobb all day. I'm reading a Robin Hobb book this month. I'm really looking forward to it. To just round out my epic fantasy series, I'm also going to try to get to Before They Were Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. I read The Blade itself last month and immediately bought book two because truly I fell in love with just the structure, the writing, the world of The Blade itself. It's kind of hard to describe this particular series, to be quite honest. It's another very character-led fantasy story which obviously I have a deep soft spot for. I love character-focused fantasy work, and I love when authors kind of take their time with kind of developing and showing us the plot, and instead focusing first on the characters, their lives, their motivations. It tends to just make me even more invested, if that makes sense. But the Blade itself basically kind of drops us into this world with very little context or background, and very quickly into the lives of, I would say, 3 main characters, 3 additional still very important side characters. Context of the plot itself doesn't even begin to start to make sense until the end of the first one, but it's still very, very entertaining watching these characters sort of live their lives. This is a grim, dark fantasy, and I would say the main characters within the first one at least is first Logan, who is a warrior from the north, and he's kind of going on his own personal quest and journey south for reasons that are a little unclear to us and honestly a little unclear to him, and he kind of finds himself now attending to this magi and his particular interests within the land. We follow Glokta, who is an inquisitor within his kingdom, and he basically investigates different types of crime against the crown. Glokta, before the start of this novel, was a warrior, but he was captured in the previous war and tortured, leaving him with lifelong injuries as a result of this, and also greatly changed the trajectory of his life. And then lastly, we follow Giselle, who is this sort of pompous young aristocrat who is training for a sword competition. Again, the setting of this book is kind of vague. The world building is very slow, but you begin to kind of get a picture of the overall story and the setting and the pieces by the end of book 1. But what I really loved about this world is sort of the grim, dark setting. It's bloody, it's gruesome, there are lots of fights, and also the characters themselves I find to be oddly likable, even though they are very morally gray. And with that, it also creates this atmosphere of unpredictability because they're not the classic hero. They don't really fall into the expected fantasy trope, so the plot and their decisions are very unpredictable for me, at least as a reader, which I really like. But more about the second one, because the plot wasn't really very forward within the first one. It was really about setting the pieces. I'm really excited to see now how the plot continues to evolve in books 2 and 3, as I do have a feeling it's going to expand quite a bit now that we have the context of the first one, which means I was not planning on reading this book in December, but I just can't help myself. I wanted to pick it up right away too. I just loved the first one so much. I'm also trying to get my hands on the audiobook, hopefully from the library before the end of the month as well. I can't wait. It's like a bloody good time. I don't know. You like people that you would never expect. It's great. Next up, I was craving some angsty paranormal fantasy romance, so I've decided to start my reread of Written and Read as part of the Others series by Anne Bishop. I read this many, many years ago and honestly do not remember much at all, but from what I can recall, we follow our main character who is a blood prophet, meaning if you cut her, she's able to see glimpses of the future. At the beginning of this book, she escapes her employer who has kept her captured, and she basically runs to the only place that she can think of to find sanctuary, which is the Lakeside Courtyard, which is a business district for others that live in this world. There are vampires and werewolves and all sorts of types of paranormal creatures. She hides her power as it is very rare and also very sought after, and becomes a human liaison. Our other main character is Simon, and he's very suspicious of this new human liaison who is working in his Lakeside Courtyard. And they kind of have this will they, won't they, hate each other, love each other sort of vibe, which I always find to be incredibly entertaining in stories like this. This is a many book series, so I'm just looking forward to some action, some paranormal romance, something just highly entertaining and addicting, and I already know I enjoyed this in the past, so I'm hoping it's another home run in the present. And the last set of books are all like lyrical, beautiful fantasy stories. Something about wintertime just makes me want to read anything and everything that kind of has a fairy tale or just like otherworldly component to it. The first book I've honestly been saving since July to read this winter, and that is The Way Back by Gabrielle Sabat, who also wrote Anna and the Swallow Man. This is a historical sort of folklore type of story that I just feel like is going to be transporting and one that I will love so much. This is set in the village of Tupik, which is a small Eastern European village, and the people that live here are very used to sort of creatures of the night, demons, as they're everywhere, dancing on rooftops, sitting in trees, and trying to steal the living. They even have their own land called the Far Country, which is governed by demonic lords and ladies. And one night at the very start of the story, the Angel of Death decides to visit the village itself, which sends our two young protagonists on a quest and journey through the far country. We follow them as they try to survive this very perilous journey and find their way back home. And this story itself is actually inspired by Jewish folklore. I love this author's writing. I love everything about this synopsis. I feel like this could quickly become a new favorite book for me. You know when you just see a book, read about the book, and you're like, wow, okay, I think I'm going to love everything about that story. This is how I feel about this. I have very high expectations, but I'm very much looking forward to picking it up. Speaking of whimsical tales, I also have The Girl Who Fell Beneath Fairyland and Led to the Revels There by Catherine M. Valente. I reread The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a ship of her own making last month, and I'm very excited to finally continue on with the rest of the books of this series. I also actually plan to listen to the second one via audiobook, and I have that rented from my library now. These books are just the ultimate middle grade whimsical quest style story. They're just so bizarre and so visual and just unusual and quirky, just like all the adjectives. I love them so much. We follow our main character September, who in the first one gets swept away to Fairyland and she wants to go on an adventure. She makes friends. She's trying to fight evil. She encounters all sorts of different odds and ends along the way. They're just so great, and the writing is so great. I need to read more books by Catherine M. Valente. I know she has a rather long backlist of stories from all different types of genres. And just her writing style, I really, really enjoy, and I feel like I would love an adult fantasy books, which I know she's written as well. But yes, I want to read the second book of this. It's just tops. It's just so imaginative. I love it so much. The next book on my list is The Chosen and the Beautiful, which Clay actually picked up for me at the bookstore last month, and I wanted to be a little more proactive with reading his selects for me a little sooner. And so I thought, hey, I've been wanting to read this book for so long. Clay picked it out. Let's add it to my December TBR. And this is another very lyrical and beautiful YA story that I feel like I'm going to love, and is actually a queer reimagining of The Great Gatsby, centering a Vietnamese adoptee as the main character. This is said to be not only beautiful, but it is a reinvention of a classic American canon as a coming-of-age story full of magic, mystery, and glittering excess, and introduces a major new literary voice. When it comes to The Great Gatsby, that is a book I enjoyed, and I feel like this sort of update to it will make me like the book even more, if that makes sense. Like, I love the sort of over-the-top, excessive commentary on that aspect of The Great Gatsby, and it seems like the updates to the story by the author just seem to kind of bring it to a whole new level, and I'm really looking forward to it. I just want something magical and whimsical, but kind of dark, and I feel like this might have that. But nonetheless, I'm really looking forward to picking it up. It's also not very long, and I have some very long books on my TBR this month, so I'm hoping it'll be a quick read as well. The next book on my TBR is a book I've had for so many years, and I just saw it and I'm like, it's time. I want to read you. And that is The Buried Giant by Kazu Ishiguro. My brother actually saw this on my shelf, and he mentioned to me that this book kind of reminded him of The Green Knight, which is a movie we both watched and really enjoyed. So once he said that, I was like, I think it's time for me to pick this book up. I love like a very deeply atmospheric, obviously, fantasy story, and this seems to be kind of like an ode to a very classic quest type of book. But it basically follows two parents who decide to start a very treacherous quest to try to reunite with a son they have not seen in many years. They know once they set out on this journey, they will run into many hazards, they will have to overcome many obstacles, but what they were not expecting was to also be joined by some unusual individuals along the way. Again, when my brother said it kind of reminded him of The Green Knight in terms of structure and kind of the heavy atmosphere, it just sounded really, really interesting to me. I've also read other books this year by Kazu Ishiguro and really enjoyed his writing. This feels like a more fantastical, almost like legend lore style story, which I just think sounds honestly very, very cool. I also want to do a bit of research into the audiobook. It'd be a great book to listen to, but we'll see if I end up doing that. The cover itself is stunning. The pages are stunning. I've had this book for probably 7 years, so it's kind of funny that I'm finally deciding to read it, but hey, I get to my TBR eventually, that's how I feel, and honestly I can't wait to read this. And then the very last book that is on my December TBR is another reread, and that is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I'll try not to blind you with this book cover, But I finally just want to get back to rereading this book and then finishing this duology by Laini Taylor. I personally love this author's writing. I feel like she makes some really fantastic YA stories that have great romance, but just excellent plot and stakes as well. This particular book is dual perspective. One of our main characters is Laszlo, and he is a librarian, and he also on the side is a scholar of this lost city called Wheat. He spends all of his free time trying to track down any information about this particular city, as a lot of it has been destroyed, so much that their original name has been lost, hence the new name, the City of Weep. But one day a convoy visits Laszlo's town and is looking for experts to bring back with them to their city in hopes of kind of bringing it back to what it was once before. And Laszlo travels there and begins to see and unlock a lot of secrets within the city and begins to kind of understand what happened so many years ago and why so much was lost. This book has magic. It's beautifully written. It has a really fascinating central magical component too, which I really enjoyed. I remember loving this book. I feel like I honestly would love it again if I read it again, so I just want to check it out and also be very persistent and read the second book, which I have had on my TBR for years somehow. But I just love, again, lyrical fantasy, and this will definitely fit the bill with that. So I have a lot of heavy, intense, high fantasy stories and a lot of beautiful lyrical fantasy stories as well to read this month. Alrighty guys, that is my December TBR. Let me know down below some books you hope to get to before the end of the year, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!